Hey everybody, for today's project where we're continuing our irrigation work, we're going to continue working on the cinder block planter box, which is sort of the name given to it. We have put in our stakes and our form boards and our stake caps to keep it nice and safe, and we're using what's called a dry pour technique for the concrete, where instead of mixing it and then pouring it in, we're pouring in all the mixture of concrete and mortar and road base in a dry form so that we can try to get the right height that we need for the cinder block. And if we use a dry pour, it allows us a lot more time to work with the product before it sets and cures. So what we're trying to achieve is we want to have two of the hardy planks sitting on top of our mortar mix, and then cinder block sitting on top of those hardy planks will then have, hopefully in the end, a 1/4-inch lip for the driveway that they can set up against and hold them into place. And so I think that if we use 3 of the hardy planks, and if they end up flushing up with the driveway, since each of the hardy planks are a 1/4-inch thick, therefore that would mean that the cinder block should sit pretty much exactly like that and kind of tucked in there, held in place by the driveway. So let's get to it. For the dry pour that's in here right now, since it was mostly road based when we got here, that's why we went ahead and just mixed in some of the mortar mix just to give it some strength, but not a lot. And so to top it off though, since I want something a little smoother, we're going to go ahead and use what's called deck mud, which is a pretty cool product. And as my understanding is that it's Portland cement and sand, but minus the lime, so it doesn't have quite the stickiness that you're going to get with a mortar mix. And this is really good for as an underlayment, where I think the mortar is a little better for vertical surfaces when you're tiling a bathroom, something like that. So I'm gonna keep doing this, getting it pretty flat, pretty level, and then also trying to achieve what'll end up being 3/4 of an inch below the height of the existing driveway. We finished topping off with the deck mud, the masonry bed that we're creating for the hardy plank. We've got everything nice and leveled up, and this is going to allow for 2 layers of the hardy plank and still then leave us a 1/4-inch lip to tuck the cinder block behind. So now we're going to proceed with misting the dry pour until we can get it saturated. One little tip I just did want to share with everybody is, wherever you have excess dust on a driveway or wherever, you might want to go ahead and just sweep some of that off, because otherwise once it gets wet it's going to want to turn into cement as well. So you might want to go ahead and take care of that now instead of having to deal with scraping it off later. So now we got my hose set on the finest mist setting that it has, and so just really lightly just want to get it kind of set in place first, and once we've got it set, then I can add a little more water to it to make sure that it all gets nice and saturated. And we also will follow up with a trowel afterwards just to make sure we get out any lumps that are present in the masonry bed. Our deck mud's been curing for the past 3 days, so I think we're ready to go with that. It did rain a little bit this morning, so that's why everything is wet, as you see. So we're going to begin the process of laying down our hardy planks, and we're going to be using 2 layers, 2 courses of those. They're 12 feet long each, but the length of the cinder planter box is actually going to be closer to 13 feet. So we're just going to run a 12-foot section and then put in a little short section at that end. And then for the second layer, we're going to put the short little section on the opposite end down here. So let's begin the process of cleaning this first plank off, and then we'll put down our second one. For the shorter sections of the hardy plank, we're going to go ahead and make some cuts, and we're going to use what's called a cement shear, which I think is actually a really cool tool because it does a really good job of creating a nice line. It doesn't make a lot of noise, and it doesn't create really much dust at all. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you do need to cut either some hardy board or cement board, instead of grabbing a circular saw or a tile saw or a jigsaw even, if you can find yourself a cement shear, I think they are a really nice invention. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. Yeah, really nice straight line. I didn't see any dust, doesn't make a whole lot of noise, so cool product. Check it out sometime. Our 2 layers of hardy plank in place. Since they're only 12-foot sections on either end, we have a little short section just to fill that in. And this leaves us a 1/4 inch below the height of the adjacent driveway to place the cinders and let them use that 1/4 inch as a natural border to keep them in place. We've got our cinder blocks in place. Everything fits just the way that it had before we began the project. And now everything is fitting right below that 1/4 inch lip, just as we planned. So next, we're going to put in some black plastic against the back side of both of the cinders. And the intention, the reason for the black plastic is to prevent water from leaking out in between the cinders, which would also therefore mix in with the potting soil and the dirt, become mud, and then end up discoloring the adjacent driveway or the walkway or the cinders themselves. So let's take care of that. We've added our black plastic, and for the black plastic we folded it so that it's actually 2 layers thick. And what we're thinking about doing is again trying to use gravity to our advantage. So with these paver caps right here, we're going to use them to kind of help hold the black plastic in place, and then we're going to run it down here to the bottom, use these landscape pins with a hammer. In this instance I'm using a brick hammer just because it has a nice small head, so I can kind of get it in here pretty easily. And we have just soil down here, and so we can just hammer that down right in the soil, and this is going to give us a nice water barrier between our potting soil and our plants and our irrigation system and the cinder blocks, so that that water stays where it needs to be, and the planter set in and up over here in the driveway or on the walkway.